All right, we're back with another episode of Tip of the Hershberg. What the fuck?
It's cute.
It's cute.
It's
Yeah,
cute that you got your little show going here.
It's a little my little intro. I realized that Tip of the Hershberg is a very good title because it's before I get into this, Ben Moore, everybody. This is Ben Moore. Very funny comic, old road dog. We started together.
We started have I known you longer than most? Have I known you the longest of anyone that's been on so far?
100%.
Right?
100%. Yes.
And they've never heard of me.
But we started together. We've done the shit gig road. I want to say Tip of the Hershberg. It's actually, I realized there's another layer to it.
Oh.
Because it's like Tip of the Hershberg, like iceberg.
Okay.
And then it's like tip, like just, a little of me, not the whole thing. And then...
Is that what you tell the...
Yeah. And then tip like dick, right? Just a tip.
Okay, so that's 4 layers. How many layers do we have?
That's 3 layers. But here's the fourth layer. Tip is in Judaism, you don't have the tip. It's the foreskin. So it's like the thing that got thrown off. There's like a fourth layer.
Is because you had a blog called Tip of the Hershberg.
Yes, I did.
And I never got the...
Reference?
Because here's the thing about puns, is I feel like, doesn't a pun have to rhyme?
Don't do that the whole time. I feel like that's just going to knock.
Doesn't a pun have to rhyme?
No, that's not a...
Because I feel like if it doesn't rhyme, then I loses. Like
a
if your
rhyme has to rhyme. Like
if your name was like Fleischberg.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Tip of the Fleischberg?
Because that sounds more like ice.
Oh,
you know what I
I
mean?
see what you're saying. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like Fleisch, ice, but Hirsch is so much different than the word ice.
Fleischberg. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, but if you hear Tip of the Hershberg, you probably think iceberg, right?
It. But then this brings us to a 5th layer,
Uh-huh.
which is when you said Tip of the Hershberg on your blog, I always thought it's
tip,
like I tip my hat to you.
Yeah.
So you were like, this week, the Tip of the Hershberg
it works on a lot
goes to the good folks over at,
It works on a lot of levels.
Tip of the Hershberg.
And I fucking hate puns for comedy. I think it's like...
Yeah, I don't like them.
It's like, Oscar Wilde said, patriotism is the last refuge of the scoundrel. Him or George Bernard Shaw or Abraham Lincoln or Moses or Martin Luther King.
It's always Einstein.
Yeah, Einstein. But he said, patriotism is the last refuge for the scoundrel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think like puns are the last refuge for the comedian. If you're posting puns, if you're doing puns, it means you're tapped out. You're uninspired, and now you're just like becoming autistic and looking for word connections.
Or people want to. It's like ironic. They're like, "Wasn't that cute?"
Yeah, it's like, but it's cleverness, but it's not funny. You're like tapped out, funny. You don't have any funny creativity left, so now you're just like mathematically. You're a computer. You're a fucking computer.
You're doing the easier thing and then acting like it's meta.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like people
want to do people do it ironically?
Yeah, they're like, huh?
Well, that's the Brooklyn way of doing it. Yeah.
And then they always congratulate themselves and they go, that's the best pun you're going to hear about pasta today.
Right. You see Brooklyn, when you start in the open mics in Brooklyn, you see people like ironically do a pun. It's like, you could just unironically do a good joke.
I always think the hardest thing is just doing the job.
Yeah.
The hardest thing is just being funny.
Right.
But people think, especially new comics are like, yeah, I could go up there and do a bunch of jokes. And you're like, could you? Like you go to open mics, because I still go to open mics. And when I leave the house, I'll go to open mics. And it's always someone like this, they just started and they like want to sit on the bench.
Right,
and they want to be like, let's break the format down.
Right.
What are you doing? I'm going to be a character and I'm going to be zany. And it's like, well, how about write jokes?
Right.
And be on the bus for 20 years.
Right.
And then you can, like, I always feel like being a hack.
Is that bad? I feel like he's just hitting it so much. What do you think?
Am I hitting it too much?
Is that affecting it or no?
Is it bad? Oh, sorry.
Oh, if you don't hit the mic, it's
fine?
Is
it loud? It doesn't even sound. Like, this is why I don't have my headphones on.
I have my headphones on, so I hear the bumping. Yeah.
Here, I'll try.
Well, so you're like...
oh, my God, that's horrible.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Well, let's go back and actually contextualize this. So we started comedy, and I want on this episode... I've had like some New York comics on talking about New York and the road. Mm-hmm. For New York comics, they go to the road. They start in the scene in New York, and then they kind of branch out to the road. But we started in fucking the Midwest, and we did the shittiest fucking gigs on the planet. And me and you had a similar nightmarish life where we would go to these places called like the Looney Bin. And
I still go to the Looney Bin.
Yeah, you still go to the Looney Bin.
I haven't left, baby.
But we take the Greyhound there. It would be like you would take a 14-hour Greyhound ride.
I was the king of. You know what's so funny?
And I remember telling that to Dave Waite, this other comic, that you would take like a 14-hour Greyhound to go to the Looney Bin, and he just went, "I don't like comedy that much."
That was one of the darkest. Well, maybe I shouldn't even say.
No, yeah.
Well, the thing is, there are these road guys that are a little ahead of you, and there are these comics that like you look up to. Because Dave was always a little ahead.
Yeah.
And then you'll hang out with them, and you'll realize that they're disillusioned.
Right.
And I think one time I was hanging out in Cincinnati in a bar with him, and he was like, "Yeah, I went to this club and I did a weekend." And I was like, "Yeah, right." And he goes, "Yeah," and like, "So what?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess it doesn't matter." You know what I mean? Maybe you could tell he was just kind of over, like maybe where he was. I don't know.
Right? It just becomes a job.
But I'm like new, and I'm like, I would love to go
a weekend. Yeah.
But here's what's funny about this is you're looking back on this nostalgically, the riding
and
the
you're
bus.
living in that.
2 weeks ago. Let me tell you a story. I'm just still in it.
He's in it, man. He is.
I haven't left.
Because let me explain the road. Because we gotta explain this. A lot of people use the road in different ways. Here's my definition of the road. You know what I mean? I love Doug Benson. I'm on his show a lot. He's great. Okay. But he had a show called what was it? Road Comic or?
Oh, that pissed me off so much.
But he's like he's just going to different cities where there's amusement parks around, and I'm like. And he's great. I love Doug. Yeah. But like a road comic does not choose. Like at least for our definition, it is technically the road. But for my definition of the road is you don't choose. You're not like you're like, well, I'm going to Scottsburg, Indiana, because that's the gig I got.
Yeah, you're taking any. Was there a sequel? Because there was like Road Comic. Because I think they made it in L.A., so it was a lot of L.A. comics. Who, to me, that's not the.
It wasn't his show, by the way. He was just on it for a second.
Was it I Am Road Comic? I feel like
it was I Am Road Comic. And
that was I Am Comic.
It was I Am Comic, and they just had all these comics who just like chose. Where to like it was they were too successful. It wasn't,
and they were like L.A. people. Yeah. I feel like it was more like New York. Like it's two different cultures.
Yeah,
which I don't think the people in New York understand. Like what it's like to come up in the rest of the. It's so funny they call it the middle of the country.
Right.
It's the whole country.
It's the whole country. It's the whole country.
But they call the middle is everything, and then there's just two cities.
The Midwest is not New York or California.
But then it's the whole country.
The Midwest includes Georgia.
But I think once you get to Pennsylvania, you're in the road. Like you're in like everything is.
Well, that was one of the big revelations I had about when you're younger. We're both from. I'm from the South, I guess, but you're from Indiana. Mm-hmm. It's kind of similar, but like, when you grow up, they kind of teach you this thing, and this is what you learn in the road, I think, or just from traveling in America. They teach you this thing: the South and the North. And all the rednecks are below the Mason-Dixie line, and it's all like liberal people in the North. And then you actually do road gigs, or just anyone who travels, and you find the hickiest fucking Deliverance Hicks in Pennsylvania. And you're like, I've talked to people in Pennsylvania. I don't understand. They got banjos. They're fucking their cousins, and you're like, oh, it's not North versus South. It's rural versus city.
It's Long Island,
and that's why when people are like,
like if you leave...
Long Island, yes, and that's why when people are like. We should just succeed from the South. It's like, no. You can't have a civil war because there'd just be states. It'd just be like Manhattan fighting like a rural community, like in New York.
Too, it's not like
it'd be like Burlington, Vermont fighting fucking every other part of Vermont.
Yeah, that's true. But that's like the culture, and it's more conservative and whatever. But I also think that people who live in cities think that everyone is like the QAnon people that they see interviewed.
Right.
Like they think everyone in Kentucky. Or everyone in Indiana is like crazy Trump supporters that you see like Jimmy Fallon make fun of like an interview.
They think it's all
they literally think they're smarter than every person. Like there's like geniuses. There's cool people. There's people smarter than you.
Right.
In all these places. It's not homogenous. It's not. And there's cities too.
Yeah. I mean that's the thing. People think anyone with a southern accent is dumb. But I was watching a True Doc thing the other day, and it was like a lot of people from NASA have like very thick Southern accents.
Well,
they're all in like Texas.
No, isn't the headquarters of NASA in Alabama?
It's in Huntsville, Alabama. Yeah, I remember. I went there. I had a joke. I was like, "You have NASA here. What are you gonna do? Put a Confederate flag on the moon? Is that your all's goal?"
How'd that work?
It did okay.
Boo.
But they.
Can we turn these down a little bit, or no? Is that thank you?
You there is this like there's this when you do the road you have to you're typically in these tough places and learning how to make rednecks laugh,
which I feel like was a great way to come up. I'm like happy that I came up that way.
Well,
I think the big thing about coming up in New York versus the road, the Midwest, is what your goals are.
Yeah,
because for me, I always had this romantic idea of I just want to just be out there on the road, and even kind of the desperation, like the kind of rooms you were playing, having to. To me, that was I had this like Doug Stanhope.
Because I always feel
kind of like traveling.
I always feel bad for you on the road. I'm like, Jesus, he's gonna kill himself. Yeah, but like I think I feel bad, but then I realize on some level, I think you like it. I think you're a masochist. I think
here's my problem.
You enjoy the free fucking meal or the half-off meal at Chuckle Fucks.
Well, that was my goal. So here's my horrible mistake that I made with my life is I was actually what my idea of success was just get on the road, be a road comic.
Yes.
Like make your living. Like I think I was making $200 working at like Starbucks.
Yes.
And I was like, if I can make $200, literally that's what I said to myself. If I can make $200 a week as a comedian, I made it.
Right.
Which is so funny. That seemed so impossible too. Isn't it funny how your goals seem so impossible? I was like, it might take my whole life to get there.
$200 a week.
If I can just be a professional comedian. In my mind, professional.
It's also hard to understand. It's just because of inflation. It's like hard to imagine. Like,
oh, I grew up in the 50s. Did I mention that?
If I could just get
Eisenhower was in the White House.
And also, not to get all Mark Maron interview, but at this point, your parents. Let's talk about that. I want to make Ben.
You love bringing this up.
The thing about Ben that's interesting is you are a straight white dude who just cares about jokes, and you hate the kind of victim stuff of like other comics and the identity politics. And interestingly, you're an orphan.
Yeah, where's my special?
Your parents died. They just died from being fat or something in Indiana.
First of all, I don't know if I hate victims. I don't know if we want to. Here's your thing: you hate minorities,
or
and
you
women.
hate but like you had parents who died from being like just living in Indiana. How do they die?
Well, that's what's funny about that is
this is so long ago.
I feel okay. Two things about that. One, I feel like that's a New York thing too. Is like you want to have your like even like I'm a Jew from Kentucky.
Yeah.
Like you want to think of like if I was having a TV show, like what's my thing?
Which is bullshit because I'm back to the North-South thing. I'm from Louisville. I mean, there are rednecks there, but it wasn't.
I was gonna point out how Jew from Kentucky is bullshit.
Oh, it's complete bullshit. Because I just did that to get on television. It's complete bullshit.
The other thing is, you had Ariel on. I watched a couple, and you were both like Jew from Kentucky. It's pretty crazy. And both of your first jokes about it was, but they don't know what a Jew is, so it doesn't come up.
Right.
You're like, oh, so then it's not a thing.
There is some of that.
Really a thing.
There is some of that. It's not complete.
But you weren't integrating the schools.
Yeah, no.
You weren't getting rocks thrown at you.
I wasn't getting lynched. No. It's like. There's a little of that, but for the most part, I mean, there was like people shot. They're like, it's funny. People are like, it is really funny because people are like, I'm from Louisville. They're like, they're Jews in Louisville, and I'm like, the mayor in Louisville is Jewish.
That's what I'm saying. There's no all of your jokes on that topic.
He did get shot at while campaigning, but he is a Jew right now.
So all of your jokes on that topic are about why you shouldn't have brought it up. You're like, yeah, it's not a thing. But I get you're going, and I think in New York, like I'll see comics. Everyone is very Instagram.
You can't come on here and shit talk the other episode.
No, I have a lot of things. No, I did my research. I'm like, and that Sam Evans thing. You talked about poop the whole time.
There is truth to what you're saying. I mean, there are fucking rednecks. I have had people tell I'm Jewish. They're like, which one's that again? Like I have had that. Yeah. There are rednecks there. It's not like it's Louisville, but it's like any city. There's a bunch of other fucking
Louisville's Muhammad Ali Boulevard.
It's the 16th biggest city. And
60th?
16th.
Oh, 16th.
And like, it's a city, and like, the Jew from Kentucky thing is.
But I get that
a bit of a bullshit.
No, but I get that impulse, and I feel like in New York, I'll see comics who are like, "I'm the comic whose mom's dead."
Yeah, I know. And like, you could one up them,
pushing that hard.
You could one up them so much because you have both dead parents.
I'm like, yeah, everyone's mom's dead.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit? But
but maybe you need to use your shit because
that's my thing. Here's the two things about me.
Because your parents are dead.
They've been dead.
And you're still going on stage being like,
what's funny?
Being like Greyhound prices, huh? And
I'll be like, I don't care for these minorities, according to you. According to you.
Have you ever talked about your parents being dead on stage?
My parents have been dead. I actually had this is speaking of Mark Maron. This is a crazy thought. My parents have been dead longer than I knew them.
Oh, wow. I was going to say longer than you've done comedy.
No. Well, that too.
Oh, wow.
My parents have been dead longer than they were alive with me.
They've been dead longer than alive.
Because I was 19 when they died, and then that was...
You've known them as dead more than alive.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I feel comfortable making fun of it. You're more familiar with them as dead people.
And I think I've said this. Actually, what I'm about to say, I said to you one time, and you said to me, that's the kind of joke if you were a better comic. this is the kind of shit you'd be saying, which I appreciate it. You're like, you should. Why aren't you saying this on stage? Which was what I said was, I have this thing.
It's like when Louis told me to be more personal. Yeah.
Right. It's one of those things that gets in your head. No, but I feel like one of my things is just because something interesting happened to you or tragic doesn't mean it's funny until you
That's true.
Until you find. I feel like there's this thing with comics who are like, yeah, I got robbed at gunpoint. I guess I got to write a joke about it. And you're like, just because they feel like that'll make it useful to them. Like,
well, did you ever have a need? I guess sometimes I write jokes about like stuff that upsets me or like means something to me.
Yeah.
Like I had a comment on YouTube the other day that just said,
"Speaking of dead parents,
well,
you had a bad YouTube
I've had some bad shit.
So we both had tragedies in our life. Okay.
And I'm even my minor thing. I'm still like, how do I make? I'm making a solo show.
In 25 years, you'll feel better about your YouTube comment. What was your comment?
It was the meanest thing anyone's ever said to me. It was so mean. You know the YouTube comments that fucking like. And we'll get back to your dead fucking parents.
No, but
like we'll get back to
they're not going anywhere. They're going to be dead still. They're not going to come back to life.
But like, you know the YouTube comments where you're like, they feel like they know, like they got personal information. I don't know. They just knew my insecurities.
It's presumptive and. But they were right.
Can we make these a little louder? I don't like how you low. I can't hear it at all.
I didn't know we were low on both of ours.
You're the only one who's been difficult.
I didn't know I was.
No one's ever been difficult on this podcast except you.
Well, I've been doing it a long time. I'm a bitter road hack.
But so the YouTube comment was, maybe if you lost 40 pounds, you'd lose that lisp. And it hurt me to my core because I'm like, how did they know that is the exact number of weight I want to lose? It's like they get your information. I want to lose 40 pounds. In my head, I'm like, I got to lose 40. But I'm expecting when I tell that to people, then to be like, no, you don't have to lose 40. But then this guy is like, and so that's mean. The other mean thing about that comment is that it's not true. I wouldn't lose my list. It's not even...
So even in his horrible insult, it's a better world than we're living in.
Yeah, even in the meanest insult ever, it's still not a true suggestion.
They really take... This was...
Like, if you weren't so ugly, maybe you'd lose your cancer, you know?
It's amazing that these YouTube people, it's like he worked on that for 3 days. It's like, that was a bit I was writing that I probably won't do, but the idea that in poetry is beautiful, because in poetry, you take time to really think about what's great about somebody. And you use metaphors.
Yeah.
The only time in real life anyone takes the time to really describe something is when they're trying to hurt your feelings.
Why wouldn't you do that as a bit?
I'll do it as a bit now. So a poem is
the only funny bit I've ever heard you say. Why?
So a poem is like her. I'll just do it on this podcast for now. A poem is like her skin was like. Her cheeks were like the sunset over the ocean. And then real life is like, you know what you look like?
That's great.
I've been working on this for 3 days. You're like a bug if you had diarrhea.
You're like a piece of shit that a homeless guy stepped on.
Edit this out and I'll...
It is true. It is like English, like similes and metaphor that only comes into play with hate.
Because
it used to be love. It used to be like, I need metaphors. I need metaphors to express how much this woman makes.
Because they're trying to get laid.
How much? Yeah, I need metaphors to how much this woman makes. And now it's like, I need to let this asshole on Twitter know I want him to die of AIDS. And like, I want to have like a metaphor to express
that. Not only
that.
did they hate. Because I had because I'm on YouTube now too.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the saddest statement in the world.
The reason I came here to promote my hour.
You said that in a tone like, I'm doing well too.
I have the internet. I have Wi-Fi. No, well, I have an hour special.
Yeah. Okay. He has an hour special. It's very funny. He's a hilarious comic.
You got to get my hour. It's the first time I've released an hour special.
It's called My Dead Dad and Mom.
Am I a good boy now? It's called, will you come back for this?
What's it called? Yeah, plug the special.
It's called Live at the Comedy Attic. It's on YouTube. It's doing, in a month, it's got like 33,000 views.
That's amazing.
That's great, right?
That's amazing. I mean, the special came out in 1982.
We can get back to that. That goes back to what we were talking about before.
You're like finally promoting your special. It's been like 42 years.
I would say I've tried to have a career as a folk legend. I've tried to be like a guy on like Stuart Huff. Remember him? That was my hero.
Yeah,
I was like, I want to be
Stuart Huff.
I want to be like a guy who, like, that was funny. Like, I had a girlfriend.
The poetry loses its poetry though, like the poeticness of struggling. Once you don't have health insurance, like the poetry.
No, that's what I was going to say. Is I remember I had all these. It's funny the girlfriends you like when you have a girlfriend. Like now, when you have a girlfriend, she's coming into you as a comic.
Yes,
like, you're already successful.
And she used to be a comic.
Oh, was she really?
Yeah,
I got to meet this lady.
Yeah, she used to be a comic.
But then there's the girlfriends you had when you were like a boy with a dream.
Yeah.
You were like becoming a comic, right? And it's so funny. Like, I remember the girl I was dating for like a couple of years when I was like just getting started, and I was in the green room at the Comedy Attic, and I told her, like, this is the guy. Like, I want to one day be like him.
Yeah.
And we were standing there, and he puts his finger in his mouth and goes, yeah, I think another tooth's falling out.
Stuart Huff?
Yeah, and she was
so
like,
funny.
That's the
guy?
It was another wait, I have a second story like that too.
Uh-huh.
Can I do two
of
stories?
Of course.
Is same girl. We go to Go Bananas in Cincinnati, and Jeff Tate.
Yes.
He comes over to the table. Well, she goes to the bathroom, right? And Jeff Tate comes over to the table, and he says to me, he's like, hey, I saw you. I don't know if it was the open mic or featuring. He was like, you know, I was like, new. So he was like, stick with it. That was really good stuff. And he leaves. And then she comes back from the bathroom, and I go, you don't know what just happened, but Jeff Tate, who you haven't heard of, but he's a great comic. He's someone I want to be like. And he just came over here when you were gone. He told me that I was good at comedy. And then she goes, you mean our waiter? And I said, well, tonight he's also a waiter.
He was a waiter, and you didn't even.
He was our waiter.
That's so funny.
I think he was just coming in to like help out that night or something.
See that guy mopping? That guy really believes in me.
That guy says I could one day mop.
That's so funny. I mean, like, but that is funny too. It's comedy. It's like so much comedy is like kind of like, oh my God, this person no one's heard of but me and my friends is in the room. You know what I mean? It's like, well, if no one else has heard of them, who gives a shit?
When I'm trying to impress women, online or whatever on apps, I'm always like, I don't want to name drop, but you know, I have worked with like Mark Maron.
And they're like, who?
And they'll be like, I've never. They'll be like, does he know Doja Cat? I've heard of Doja Cat.
Wasn't your credit for a while? Mark Maron mentioned you on the podcast.
It still is.
You did that. You get mad at me for Jew from Kentucky. Mark Maron once said your name on the podcast, and then you have the Mark Maron.
I have not.
You have the WTF logo on the poster. You have the WTF logo on the poster.
That was a fortunate misunderstanding. I didn't do that, but I didn't stop it. What happened was, that's actually a good. We could maybe get into that because we're both sober. So Mark Maron figured in heavily to my getting sober.
But I want to go back to one thing, which is the fact that YouTube comment was so upsetting. I had to write a joke right away. And your parents died like, what, 2 months apart?
Yeah, the same year.
Same year? That's like
in the same year.
David Edgar's wrote a memoir about that called The Heartbreaking Work of...
I'm still... I'm not fucked up anymore. I might be fucked
Why don't you profit from this cynically?
Okay, here's the thing. Here's the two things. My parents died when I was young, and I am an identical twin. And you're an identical... We're both twins. I don't mention it ever.
You have an identical...
got some great twin stuff.
You have... I'm ripping from everything. I'm like,
whatever.
Jew from Kentucky, twin. So anyway... Your parents died 2 months apart.
I feel like there's something else. There was but in this, like within a year, and I was 19. You
got no jokes?
Well, that's my thing is
trauma plus jokes. No, equal jokes.
I don't think that's true. I just don't think that's true.
So how do you look at it jokes wise?
How I look at jokes is basically because people say like, what's the difference between a comedian or how do you come up with your material?
Yeah,
I get that a lot.
I guess I'm asking that right now.
Yeah, these hacky interviewers. You know how you do morning radio
but I'm asking
and some asshole.
I'm asking like, you're a hack. How does a hack? How does someone who's not looking to take their emotional baggage?
How have you unexplored so much of your life?
Well, you know,
But
you know what's funny too? It's like when you write jokes about, like if I write a joke about the list fat thing, or even people write jokes about real trauma. It's like a deflection.
I was just thinking how funny it would be if I asked you that. I was like, so how have you delved into this lisp fat thing? First question. Now, have you written a lot of jokes about your lisp fat thing?
But you know what's funny? Those jokes, even that you write, are a deflection from the trauma or the upsetness. You know what I mean?
Or you're like, I'm going to diffuse it. I'm going to laugh.
So even a joke about your parents being dead would still be a deflection from trauma. But you don't even do the deflection from trauma.
But here's the thing. The idea that stand-up is your therapy is self-indulgent and false. It's false. It's just not true. It's just not true.
And you are the true road comic, and this is why I love your comedy. You're a true road comic.
YouTube.
You're all about entertaining the audience.
Everybody is. Whether they know it or not, they are.
Yes, but some people, self-expression does have value to a lot of comics. To like get something out from within. Yeah. I still want it to be entertaining. But I still want to I'm excited if I can do a joke about a thought I just had, and that thought's like you can get something out of like a personal experience. I am excited by that.
Well, here's where I think self-expression has value is the whole, like the way a joke works. Is that a pretentious way to start a sentence?
No.
Is it's just you have to have people need to be surprised, right? So they need to be surprised by. It has to be something familiar, so it has to be a topic they know and they can relate to. But then the take is the important. People think it's the topic or the take, like what you're in.
What you're in, yeah.
So your take on the issue has to be something where they go, oh, I've never heard that before.
Right.
So if you have some personal thing, like there aren't a lot of people who have written a lot of great jokes on having a lisp or having dead parents. Like that's not. So if you can have a take that they've never heard,
yes,
then it's going to be a great joke if you can then land it.
Right.
But I think a take on owls is as valuable as a take on dead parents.
Definitely.
The question is, how original is it?
Definitely. I agree. And
so that's why a take on dating, it's going to be harder to do a take on date, which that's totally great topic and it's relatable. But there's so many takes that you've heard on dating.
So a good one is impressive, yeah.
Whereas dead parents, you've heard less. So that the value of dead parents is just, and also I do think if you can make someone laugh on a dark topic, it's a deeper laugh.
Have you ever had?
That is true.
Yeah, I'm just curious, and you have great jokes. I love your jokes
on YouTube.
You have a great, lot of great material. But like, I am curious because I think about this too. I opened for Louis this weekend. He kind of said at one point, he's like, "You should be a little more."
I knew this was going to get in your head because you mentioned this before.
Well, he said I should be more personal.
It's so.
But he did say like you are personal in your older material, but because I was doing newer stuff, like you should be more personal. And he brought that up at one point. He kind of just said. Talking about it just got into my head. I'm like, because you start looking at your stand-up, like, is this personal? Is this personal? But then you're like, everything's personal in some degree. And it's like, I have a bit about carrier pigeons. It's personal to me, but it's like.
It's so weird that he would say that too, because like, I don't think of him as a necessarily.
I know it was an interesting comment.
I mean, he's like my favorite comedian.
But
him and Norm. But Norm wasn't personal at all.
No, quite the opposite. But for you, I wonder, like, and I'm just curious, and I'm like, I'm half joking, but like, with the dead parents, did you ever try to do jokes?
Well, I guess
because it is an interesting thing. I'm not saying it's bad that you don't do. It is interesting that you have dead parents.
Well,
and you haven't done.
I was gonna say, well, I guess two things. One is that it happened when I was 19.
Yes,
and I didn't become a comedian for 8 years.
Oh, interesting.
So I was a little late.
I forget how old you are.
I know, I'm so old. I'm so old. I was a little late to the game. Which is funny. Now 27 seems young to me.
Yeah.
But at the time I was like, oh, I'm late. Because like when I started in Indiana, there were like 5 of us that started. And I was like the old guy because I was 27. And everyone else was like 22. Which in your 20s, like that seems like late 20s seems so much older.
Right.
Like one guy was like, you could be my dad. And I was like, that's not, you're 5 years. Like that's not how dads are.
Yeah.
But so I was 27. So even when I started doing it, it had been 8 years even at that point.
Right.
So it was, but I think for me, how you write material is you talk to yourself a lot.
Yes.
And I think how funny you are dictates how much you make yourself laugh in your own head.
Yes.
So I don't know how much people do that, but then a comedian is someone who just listens to that voice. And then if I make myself laugh, I've trained myself to grab it and stop what I'm doing and go, okay, write that down.
Right.
And then work on it, and there's a 1 in 10 chance it'll be worth saving.
Right. Because you always give great feedback. I always love working on jokes with you.
Yeah, right.
And I remember one time you said, like, this joke's not working, but I find it so funny. And you had some response like, yeah, but other people don't. That's part of it. Part of it
That's all
is
of it.
being
That's
like,
all of it.
just because you find it funny does not mean other people are going to find it funny.
Yeah.
Basically, a joke that works is an agreement between the audience and you that something's funny.
And I think these people that are like, because I've heard people say that like, well, I'm not going to compromise myself.
No,
then go write a poem. Like that's the
no,
joke.
Comedy is you are with a focus group.
Yeah.
And the focus group is there the whole time.
Hey, go write a poem.
Go write a fucking poem. But also at the same time, like, this is where it's a little nuanced. Because, like, yes, but there's also hacky things what the audience would laugh at. That doesn't mean you should do those. And that's where the self-expression.
I'm always interested on the topic of hack. Because I feel like people think they know what that means.
No, you're right. Because part of me also thinks, people are like, that comic's a hack. And like, no, you probably just don't think he's funny. But he thinks he's funny.
I'm trying to think, how many times have I actually seen a guy go up and kill, and it wasn't like.
I see that all the time.
And it's stupid and bad?
Of course. But
what kind of stuff?
But I think the question is, do they think it's hacky? Hacky to me suggests they have the potential of something else and they're settling.
That's what.
But it's like, I think they're just doing what they think is funny.
Well, that's the thing about like the internet.
The sensibility.
Like the thing about the internet now is people can go right to the creators that they relate to. So you have these people that are famous because they're an idiot, and they have a million idiots that think what they do is great, and you're like, why? Whereas in the past, you'd have to have like a network sign off on it. So I think that that's a person who they're an idiot or whatever. What they think is funny is like lowbrow, but then there's 200. They can find 200 people that are like, but so it's. I guess I wouldn't. Yeah, I always think that there's what
it's like when a guy's like, women aren't funny. It's like, well, A, that's not true, but also like, like maybe you don't find women funny, but like a lot of women probably have very different tastes than you.
Well, that's the other thing about
even if you don't find women funny, I don't know. It's like women might have like a woman might relate way more to a female comic than you do.
Which I think that's why if you're like a young woman, and you're like good at comedy, you're gonna be like Taylor Tomlinson.
Yeah,
she's huge because there's all these 25-year-old women that are like, we want.
And she's obviously
she's actually
hilarious.
is fun. I'm not saying but they're like, we want someone that I can relate to.
Yeah, it's not like deep down they think Bill Burr is funnier and they're fake laughing.
Doesn't that suck that we do think that though?
Yeah, but it's not true.
We're like, Bill Burr's funnier and you know it. No, that's just for us.
They're both great, but they're not like, maybe they love Bill Burr too, but it's like women might not all relate to Bill Burr, especially since most of his jokes are. A lot of his jokes are like, they are like sexist. They're just very funny. But like a woman might not relate to that. You know what I mean?
I guess it is.
But
sexist.
It is
kind of sexist, isn't it?
Yeah, he's hilarious. But yeah, sometimes.
Well, that goes to what I was saying is, I think so often the take just needs to be original and surprising. And then, like, to me, there's nothing funnier than defending a bad point.
Yeah, of course.
Like when I think of what's a joke, if I was going to like explain to someone what a joke is, Bill Burr saying, Oprah said that being a mother is the hardest job in the world.
Yes.
And then him going, is it though?
Is it though? Yeah.
Now, capital T truth. Mothers are important. Mothers are great. We all love our mothers. They do a great job and it's hard. But that's not funny.
Oh, yeah.
So the take is the little T truth of like, well, here's an angle that's actually going to surprise you and that is kind of wrong. Well, yeah, I'm going to defend it and I'm going to make my case for it.
And that's why funny. People are confused a lot they think comedy is like, it's like when they see a comedian maybe did something wrong and they're like, he did his new show and there wasn't any remorse. It's like, yes, that's what I go to comedy for repentance. It's like
what did you think?
Like it's not, you're there for laughs. I mean, like,
that's there's a epidemic of reporters going to comedy shows and reporting on what the comedian said like it's news.
Well, it's like when they got mad at Louis for doing the joke about how he hates like the people advocating for school shootings.
Yeah,
it's funny because it's wrong.
That was such a good joke,
and it's funny because it's such a good wrong. Joke. Like there are people are like, but here's the thing:
wrong is funny. Wrong is funny.
Knew it was wrong. That's why he's saying it. Yeah, it's wrong. It's funny and like. And being virtuous and stuff is not. I mean, comedy is kind of admitting to like.
But it's also funny because it is true, but it's a smaller truth.
Yes,
it's like a smaller. Like what he said was true, but it's not what you would lead with at the press conference for the kids.
Right?
Like you wouldn't get up and go, you know what? Actually, some of those kids were annoying. Like that's true, and that's why it's a good joke because it's a surprising truth that you haven't heard before, but you laugh because it's true, but you also laugh because it's wrong.
Yeah, like I'm not saying it's a great joke, but it's just an example of something where like I have a joke where I'm like men also are affected a lot by abortion, right? Like for instance, I was with a woman after a show, we were having sex, and Roe vs. Wade had just been overturned, and she didn't want to risk it, so she made me wear a condom. And I just take a pause. I'm like, folks, we're gonna hear more and more of these horror stories coming out, and it's like. And like sometimes people get offended a little. I don't know how great of a joke it is, but the point is like
it's a good example of what
I'm aware of that I'm doing a selfish character right there. So it's like I'm trying to be I don't actually think that, but I also kind of do a little.
That's what I'm saying. It's funny if it's true, but it's also transgressive.
Yes,
it's a truth that you would get in trouble. It's
a truth that is not equal to women's. Inconvenience.
Yeah, you know that's true. Yeah. It's almost like a comedy club is a place to say all the things that are true that you can only say there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and now was a lot of shit. Now that place is no longer. It's like, how dare you say that at this nightclub
where people came to get drunk and laugh at you and say, I think.
And so that is, I do love that point of comedy of taking, being wrong.
That's the most funny. It's the most fun. And sometimes it's just a left turn. Like sometimes you can get away with a joke where you just think I'm going to go over here and then you just go the other way. But even that's fun.
But there is a great point we're making, which is like, it is this weird thing. It's wrong. A great joke is like wrong, but also it's like a little true. It is. It's both
That's
so
what I
sick.
say.
Like when Bill Burr's like, no one has the balls to just come out and say it. Most of the population has to go. It's like, that's wrong. But then a little part of it's like,
I would say
that's kind of true.
the big T is the thing that you should think, and the little T is the thing that's true.
But that's
basically you know what we're skirting around here.
What
is of course, but maybe.
Right, of course, but maybe, and also like
that's why that's such a great. The reason, of course, but maybe is the greatest joke ever written is because it's a joke. But it's also a joke where he's explaining how comedy works.
Yeah, it's like a definition of
course,
comedy.
but maybe is literally how comedy works.
Yeah, there's like the good
big T
ideology. Yeah, the little big T. That's great. That's a great point.
I think of it as the big T and the little T.
Big T and the little T. Yeah, because he's like, of course, I love my nephew, and like peanut allergies are awful. But maybe if you weren't meant to survive, you shouldn't. You know what I mean?
And we don't laugh at the big T because, of course.
Yes.
But we laugh at the little T because, oh shit. Like, if it wasn't true.
And now people are confusing that with, like, we're not saying that should be legislated. Like, Bill Burr isn't like, we should commit genocide.
Because then a journalist will go. And they'll write that down.
He's just saying, there's a little truth to it. But if you think about it a lot, it's definitely not big.
Well, do you know how you can tell that journalists are always full of shit?
Yeah.
Is they always, in the articles they write, they never say the word joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
They always go, and then Louis commented. And you're like, see, you know that if you said joke, you would sound stupid.
That's a great point.
You know that if you said, and then he joked, people would go, yeah, he joked.
Yeah, he joked. No, and then he said, maybe we should bring back slavery.
Sometimes it's still funny. Like, I remember when the Shane Gillis thing happened.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to get the podcast. Like, there was stuff Shane Gillis said that he got canceled for. That when they reported it, I laughed.
Yeah, I was like, that's how you know a good joke.
I was like, they're upset about this, and I'm still laughing at the transcript.
Yeah,
that's how funny it was.
They do that like sometimes. Like this really funny writer, Megan Amran. She writes for a bunch of TV shows. She got in trouble for a little bit. They found all these old tweets, and they were all hilarious. Like that's how you know a joke's great. You know a joke's great when they still survive in the article, canceling the person.
And you giggle. And you go. Well, Well, that's what I noticed. That's something else I noticed about how comedy has changed. Is there was this weird evolution where right before people on Twitter started getting like wanting to like kind of police everyone, like right before everyone got very sensitive on Twitter, there was this era. There was like 2 years of Twitter where it was all an edgelord competition.
Right.
There was 2 years from like 2009 to like 10, 11, 12. Like people are like, why is there so much blackface now resurfacing? Or why are there all these horrible tweets resurfacing? Because for a while, it was just weird. It was like, what's the edgiest thing?
Right.
And then, but I almost feel like that was a better time for that reason. Because I feel like when it's out in the open and people, it's almost like that's a way of taking the sting out of it.
Right. Though the edgelord shit is annoying in another way. It's like, these are jokes. Mm-hmm. And then you see some edgelord people just like doing blackface. And you're like, all right, well, that's a little much. And then you're like, you're confusing this with like a good joke. You know what I mean?
I think like because they did it like the blackface thing is a good example of there was something that it was in comedy because it was so controversial. It's like every joke has to have like a black powder in it.
Yeah.
Like there has to be a part of it that is explosive. And then how you dance around it is what makes it fun. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be a wrong part.
Right.
And I think that like it was like blackface was like on 30 Rock.
Yeah.
It was on like network primetime television. But the joke was always, look how dumb this person is who doesn't know this is wrong.
Right.
It was never like, haha, wasn't it funny when we did that?
Yeah, they're scolding her in the bit.
Yeah, so which that's every bit. Like every bit on a TV show, it's like they think this guy's a murderer and he's not. It's always a misunderstanding.
Well, yeah. At the end of the day, it goes back to like people taking themselves too seriously. Yeah. But at the same time, life is complicated, and there is because there's like there are people who are like takes shit too seriously, and then other people are like, it was just a joke when I beat that homeless man's face in. You know what I mean? So it's like there is like. It's just a joke when I think this politician should get shot at. So there is a complicated world you're living in where you have to find some balance.
I think that you put comedians in danger. Like that's my least favorite thing is when someone will try to make a political statement.
Yeah.
And then it backfires on them.
And then
they go like when Kathy Griffith.
Yeah.
When Kathy Griffith, she had that picture where she was holding Donald Trump's severed bloody head.
Yeah.
Which is clearly she was trying to be controversial. She was trying to make a statement. And then when she got in trouble, she was like, "You guys don't like comedy? I was doing the old head. I actually had I wrote a pack. This is back when I had a manager. I wrote a packet for SNL.
Long time ago.
This was in the 70s. I wrote a packet for a manager or for SNL right around the time that looking back on it, these sketches were weird.
Yeah.
But one of the sketches was the history of the decapitated bloody head joke.
Okay, yeah.
In comedy, like the old bloody head dangle, I think I called it. And they were talking to comedy historians about like, well, the first Abbott and Costello would hold up a bloody head.
Right.
And talk about, you know what, that was a great sketch. They should have hired me.
But yeah, so yeah, I mean, it is a complicated line. But back to your dead parents. Did you ever try to write a joke about them?
Did I ever try to write? See, well, this goes back to what I was saying is you think in your head what's funny, and then you write down what you think is funny. So I've just never. I personally, I don't. Well, maybe I'm different in this way than you.
Speaking of the mic.
So maybe I'm different than you, and that I think some people they sit down and they go, "Here's a topic that I want to address," and that's one way to write.
Yeah.
But I wait until something funny pops in my head, and then I work on it.
Okay.
So I never sat down.
Something never hilarious about your dead parents popped in your head.
Believe it or not, nothing hilarious. But I think I probably have. I sit down and write for 30 minutes. I try to do 30 minutes once a year, and I have. I think sat down and gone like, okay, maybe I should. What's the angle?
You are the least sanctimonious person I know, and I mean that in a good way.
How do you?
You have no self-righteousness or no virtue. Like I'm a virtuous person, and you have none of that. Like I have to do a joke about my dead parents.
I almost think
you have none of that.
The amount of things that
maybe that need has to come first. So like the need to be like, I want to do a joke about
the amount of things that
parents.
I find narcissistic make me think I'm Amish.
Yeah.
Like any amount of self, like I'm important. I go ugh.
Which is funny because you are narcissistic.
You think so?
A little.
How so though? I'm curious. How so? Isn't that funny? You just said a thing about me, and I go, "How am I not?" I go, "Tell me more about that."
I mean, look, it's a spectrum. We're all on it, but like, I do. It is interesting how you write. So you don't, because for me, I think of comedy, and this is where we always argue. Ultimately, you are a bit of an absolutist sometimes, and I try to find the little middle ground. You're an absolutist when it comes to free speech and a lot of things. I'm a little more like. No.
People, where did I give this? I feel like that probably is right, but I feel like I was talking to. This will happen. I was talking to like Jeff.
Yeah,
and he'd be like, "No, you probably like this because you're a QAnon. You're a QAnon."
But you are.
Why do people think I'm a?
You're an absolutist about comedy. You think comedy just has to be entertaining, and make people laugh. You don't care about the idea of a joke being. Like there is no like, oh, that joke is more important than this joke kind of shit.
Do people think that though? Do people think that like,
or that you don't think self-expression, you're not as interested in self-expression as you are.
Yeah, I think if therapy happens along the way, if you find yourself along the way, great. But the job is to make people laugh.
Yes.
But that being said, I mean, I guess why do we remember Richard Pryor as opposed to Peachy Guy?
Exactly. I mean, like to me, it's like.
I get that he was more personal.
I guess I think there is a balance where it's like you do. To me, what I like about comedy is a tug of war between you have the artistic side and then you have the sports side, right? Comedy is half an art and half a sport. Now the sports side has clear scoring, the laughs, right?
That's why I love it.
You love the sport part.
What I love about comedy is it's the most honest feedback you can get from anything.
Yes.
It's yes or no. It's working.
Yes.
And we'll give you a decibel level to let you know how much it's working.
That's the sport part.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side, which is self-expression. If you go too much into the self-expression side, it becomes self-indulgent. If you go too much into the sports side, where it's all sports, you can become shallow or hacky because you'll do anything for a laugh. But the middle ground between self-indulgence and just 100% crowd-pleasing, I mean, it's all crowd-pleasing, but like taking jokes that are maybe more challenging, more difficult, that middle ground is where I'm trying to like reach towards, or I like that middle ground. You know what I mean? I like that tension between the two things.
Well, I would say that if you're working it properly, you're doing both at once.
Yeah.
Which is the art is what you write.
Yeah.
And the sport is what you throw out.
Right.
So I always think of it as two filters. I think I've said these to you 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Where it's like the first filter is what you think is funny.
Right.
And you write down what you think is funny. And you say all that stuff.
Right.
And the second filter is what the crowd night after night thinks is funny consistently.
Yes.
And those are the two filters. Now, if you lower the crowd filter, you're I'm an artist, look at me, alt comic, and that's self-indulgent.
Yes.
But if you lower the what I think is funny filter, now you're a hack and you're just saying what they want.
This is like my analogy. Yeah.
So it's pretty
it's like the exact same thing.
It's the exact same thing. I wasn't listening.
Yeah, because you're narcissist.
No, but I'm saying so you need to do. No, but you're saying it's a balance between the two. I'm saying it's both at once. It's not either or.
You're right.
You just make sure you're doing both at once.
But sometimes I do think there are certain jokes where, and this is where the dead parents come in, or personal experiences, where it's like,
are you trying to make me cry?
Well, I just think that sometimes if you take something from a personal life or a joke like that, it is going to be more unique to you. And I guess that's the worry. Like, just because you have a joke that makes people laugh, and this is what you've always felt. You've always felt like it's all about just crushing. Yeah. But one of the things I've learned is like that's not true. Like,
maybe it's not,
because there is stuff that gets remembered and people relate to.
You know what I feel like a lot on the road is I feel like, and maybe you've had this feeling. I feel like I'll go to a random road gig, I'll kill.
Yeah.
People will shake my hands,
and then they'll forget.
I'll be like, they're gonna forget my face by the time they get to their car.
And
they'll remember having a good time, but they're not my fans.
But if you cried about your dead mom. They would remember by the time they got it.
Wouldn't it be great if this was like a Steve Raanan ZZ thing, and it turns out I don't have dead parents? I'm like, I just wanted to make it
you definitely do, because it makes no sense that you lied, because you have not used it for your benefit at all.
Oh, wait. I want to go to the joke that you thought I should do about my dead parents.
What was the joke?
Because I was just trying to make a point, but you said it was such a dark point that it would be a good joke.
What was the joke? Uh-oh.
Well, I mean, I already blew my poetry joke, which apparently was gold. But so that we lived together. We were a gay couple.
Yeah.
And we would just talk in the kitchen a lot.
Yeah, before I made it big.
And then you made it big and you left.
Before I became huge.
You left
before
me.
I became famous.
That keeps happening. I think my current roommate's about to probably go. That's what's great about New York is you'll be talking to somebody and you're on the same level, and then they'll go step into a rocket ship.
Well, I mean, by rocket ship, you just mean living alone. But yeah. But that's
another thing, too. I'll get back to the joke, but I was so surprised listening to you and Steve how it's like everyone kind of thinks they're struggling.
Everyone, yeah. Well, because life.
Like in my mind, because you pretty much would you say you can headline any comedy club you want?
No.
Oh.
No, I mean that's not. I mean,
then you're not doing well.
Yeah, I mean,
are you going to Acme?
Yeah. I mean, no one can. Everyone is. I don't know. Life is a struggle. Like that's just how
my secret is. I featured and I. Okay, I'll say this before I say the other thing. Is you were talking about the bus. The last gig I had was 2 weeks ago. I took a Chinatown bus for 15 hours.
Jesus Christ!
To go feature in Atlanta.
I didn't know Chinatown Bus was even like around. Did they bring that company back just for you?
No, it's around. You go to Chinatown, it's $70 to go to Atlanta.
I know, it's terrifying. I've done it.
It used to be 30.
Well, I told you I did it once, and there was a.
Did you do it? This is my first time. It was 2 weeks ago.
I did it once, and there was a guy sat next to me, like sobbed uncontrollably, then fell asleep on my shoulder.
I remember that.
And then I woke him up, sat in another seat, and he walked up and sat next to me again.
That sounds like the Chinatown.
Yeah,
bus.
like literally, like we're on like an elementary school, like stick with your, like friend field trip bullshit. And then and this is like totally true. Like there was also another guy who was like 3 chickens on the bus. Like he had like 3 chickens.
This is what I like about you. No other New York comics have had these experiences.
Oh yeah, I was going to Toledo for $7, and
$7.
It was something like $7. Yeah,
I would go with some chickens for $7.
And I do remember at one point there was like a Chinese guy in all denim listening to like a speaker. Like
I love the denim.
Yeah, all denim. But I do remember at one point I fell asleep, and when I woke up, the bus was driving super fast, like speed level.
They booked.
Oh, they were like bad. But I looked up, and the bus driver was asleep in one of the seats, and the Chinese denim guy was driving. Like they were switching. Yeah, like I was like,
did he work for the company?
I don't know. I literally think he was like, hey, you want to go I'm a little tired. Like I thought I was next. I was terrified. Like I literally felt, yeah, it was.
Because my guy, I think what I heard was, and this sounds like it was a couple of years ago, what I heard is they made it a little better, but also the prices went up.
People can only bring 2 chickens.
Yeah, it's a 2 chicken. You have to one for the overhead,
yeah,
and then one under your seat.
Oh, it's a nightmare. You did that recently, yeah.
I did. So 15 to get to Atlanta. I had a great time in Atlanta with Nick Griffin. He's great. I opened for him.
One of the best.
He's one of my favorites. And featured for him. Had a great time. And then it was 17 hours back. Although he was going so fast, we got there early. He was just booking because it was middle of the night, right? So I was on. This is 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I was on this Chinatown bus.
And let me just say, by the way, I say we all struggle, but You are objectively doing
struggling.
bad. Yeah, that's not relative.
That's why Steve with his little "I didn't get it until I got it" story.
But yes, you did it. We all struggle.
I didn't get Colbert until I got.
Congratulations,
Colbert.
you won. You're doing the worst.
I love Steve. He's great.
But anyway, this is a struggle. This is objectively a struggle.
But I still love it. Yeah. But I was on the Chinatown bus at midnight on New Year's Eve.
I mean, are you weeping? Did you hear that? Did you hear that?
Praying that no one kissed me. Praying.
With your fucking dead parents.
Halfway through. I was halfway through a 17-hour trip at the stroke of midnight. It was midnight. It was. I just been in Atlanta.
But here's the question.
I had a weird.
Here's the question.
I don't even know if I should bring this other part up.
What?
No. It's
what? Bring it up. You can't not bring it up.
Slept with some random person.
Oh, that's great.
So I'm also. Yeah. Huh?
But
Fonz knows what I'm talking about. That's what they call him, the Fawn. But so I also had this thing of like I probably got it. We were the same in that way. I feel like we've had these phone calls where it's like I just assume we're both hypochondriacs.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing about
I'm fine.
You never get the thing you're thinking of. That's the thing about hypochondria. It really helps me out. I'm like, whatever I'm freaking out, I'm not going to have that. There'll be something else bad, but it's different. You're like, I'm going to get an STD, and then you have like foot cancer.
So
it's like a different thing.
So I'd also been awake at that point for like 3 days or something.
I mean, this is like too sad for a country song.
So I said this random girl, and then
this is too sad for a Charles Bukowski poem. Like this is like, how did you feel though in that moment? Like, were you sad or were you just content? See, that's the thing. I feel bad for you, but I think you are content in a weird way.
Well, this is something else I was going to talk to you about, and I still need to get back to the joke.
Yeah.
That was good. But the idea of the road is its own culture, and that's all I thought to even think about. Like when you come from the Midwest or Kentucky, you don't really think about the industry. You don't think about late night. You're not. Whereas that's all they're thinking about here.
Right.
They're like, I'm going to do it for 3 months and get on Conan.
Yeah.
Which is maybe that's smarter. But so I feel like I remember I was successful in my version of success before anyone I knew. So there was a point when I remember thinking like I'm killing it. You like still had a day job.
Yeah, I was in awe of you. You were the
I was the guy.
Shit. Yeah.
I was the shit because I just when I was 5 years in, I quit my job.
Well, it's kind of like
I was doing the road.
It's kind of like, you know what it's like with you? It's like if you're in high school and this other like friend of yours is fucking these like hot like 16-year-olds. You know what I mean?
Wait, how old am I?
We're like
wait, how old are we in this story?
We're like 14.
Okay, good.
And you're fucking this hot 16-year-old, and we're in awe of you. And then it's 15 years later, and you're still having sex with 16-year-olds.
Now, for the record, can I look at the camera?
That's a metaphor for your career. You're still, it's like, oh my, you know what I mean? You're still having sex with 16-year-olds.
Or you could say like the guy that never left high school and still hangs out.
Yeah, but that would have been funny. I wanted to call you a pedophile.
Okay, well.
But so
none of those allegations have been proven.
But if you talk about your dead fucking parents, maybe you'll get on late night and get like a HBO bullshit.
So I
talk about your dead parents.
I peaked early and then I stayed in the road. I
did a solo show about my grandma dying. I didn't even know the bitch. Talk about your fucking dead parents.
So when you
quit talking about fucking dating and talk about your fucking dead parents, and you won't be on a fucking Chinatown bus on New Year's.
Dating's weird when the ghost of your dead parents keeps showing up and making you cry over spaghetti.
You gotta use the shit, man. I did one joke about being a Jew from Kentucky. They put me on TV right away.
And plus, I like Esty loved that too, right? Or no, I was thinking like your Jewish mom stuff.
Yeah, I
mean, but that's like a flavorful. That's like a unique thing.
It's personal.
Like, not everyone has a Jewish mother.
Yes,
so that's like a unique.
And
you know what that is.
And not everyone has a mother, and that's who you can relate to.
Well, you're saying everyone has a mother, but me.
Yeah, well,
So that's my thing. So my dead mother was like, "Honey, honey, I'm dead." The dear.
It's like, I mean, I see so many comics have great bits about like a dead parent, and you have two dead parents.
Agree. Like I said about the thing, you shouldn't be self-indulgent, but I do think if you can figure out a take. The darker the subject, the deeper the laugh.
Yes.
The bigger the laugh. So you need to figure out how to make it funny. And don't, like, how many times have I been at a show in New York and I've had, it's such a funny thing. Comics in New York, they go up and they go, so I have an eating disorder.
Right.
And and you can tell they go, okay, let's make it funny.
Yeah.
Let's make it funny. And I'm like, how about you make it funny before you bring it up?
Well,
don't lead with the trauma and then go, well, that's enough.
Well, speaking of like the two extremes, and I've told you the story, but it is my favorite story about the two extremes. After we were doing the open mics and Trump got elected. This
is my number one favorite story in the world.
So
get ready, Fonz. You're going to love it.
So all these comics were going up just talking about Trump. They weren't funny.
You can still tell it.
Just like
I'm telling you, I haven't heard.
And all these Brooklyn comics just like not having jokes, And we have a buddy named Jordan, young comic guy.
He actually lives with me too.
Yeah, and all he cares about is jokes. He's just like writing. He's like a weird voice, and he just likes to write like
young guy,
funny jokes.
Going out every night.
And so we're doing the open mics, and the open mics are 2 minutes long. And this one woman came up on the open mic. And she was just crying about Trump. It wasn't any. She was just like, and the fact that an accused serial rapist would become president.
Now is not the time.
Yeah, would be.
Funny.
Yeah, at this open mic.
Women need to get together.
She was like, yeah, but
we need to fight.
Let me tell the story. So she was like, the fact that an accused serial rapist has become president, to the fact that most of the country, half of the country, has trivialized every rape that every woman has ever experienced, and my rapes mean nothing. Knowing half the country, knowing my parents who voted for Trump care so little about sexual assault that they'd vote for this man, it makes me wonder where this country is going. And then she gets off stage, and Jordan, he's not even listening. He just immediately goes on stage. It's just like, so I'm afraid of bugs. I'm afraid of bugs.
Like he's got the piece of paper, he's like, so that bugs.
Anyone afraid of bugs in here? I am afraid of bugs.
I love that so much. I feel like I relate. Like, God bless Jordan Maverick. So
those are the two comics: self-expression and pure.
I'm on the bugs guy. I like the bugs guy.
Well, I'm definitely gonna go bugs over not jokes.
If there's a way to combine bugs
and Trump,
and your horrible sexual harassment story.
But yeah. So it's like, and you are Jordan. You are the joke.
Like my favorite thing is when a guy starts a special, but he comes out and goes, so you guys ever ride the bus? These things, like they just
love it.
It's almost like he's starting a conversation he was already. I always tell people,
you love that, even though it's you don't like the deconstruction.
Like I always say, like I've actually had this. I've told people this, and it works. Like people think that you have to, if you're the first comic, you have to like talk to the crowd for a while.
Yeah.
I go, just go into your first joke.
You are a purist.
See what happens.
Yeah, you are a purist. You just go in.
So at the comedy shop, and she was like, well, you have to talk a little bit and get to know him. And I go, just do your first joke.
Yeah.
And then she was like, I just started doing jokes, and you know what? They came online. Like the first one doesn't do as well as it should.
Yeah.
The second one does a little better. By the third, if you just have the momentum, I think to be on stage, you have to have a momentum where you're taking them with you.
Yeah, and this is very opposite of the way I feel a little. I mean,
so much momentum though. You're like, you go up and.
But I definitely feel like I have to talk a little. I have to riff something. But though the other day I was like, because sometimes I get sick of riffing right away. So the other day I went on stage. I'm like, I'm not going to riff at all. I'm just going to go right into my joke. It was kind of nice. You're kind of locked in.
Because you're letting them know, this isn't about you.
Yes.
I'm in charge. You're going to listen.
Yes. Well, now I hate doing crowd work because it's been destroying comedy.
New York is so much crowd work.
It's
not even to get into the clips, but just like, it's just not necessary. You know what you're doing? You're putting off the job.
You know how you're putting off the job?
The show starts when the joke starts. You know how, you're fucking around.
Literally, someone messaged me. This is how bad it's getting. Someone messaged me. We did a show at a theater, and one of the comics like riffed with an audience member. I swear to God, this is a giant theater. The audience messenger messaged me, and she goes, "Do you know if anyone's taping that? Because I'd love to have that clip." The people in the audience are now trying to post crowd work clips. Like they're becoming part of the. They're like, look at this.
Because I always say,
and they're more deserving because they're the one probably saying the fucking joke.
I saw one of those recently where it was a crowd. You see those where the comic says something, the audience member gets a big laugh.
Yeah.
And then they go, "Come to my shows." And you're like, wait, but I think that, I get that people are just doing something, and there are good versions of it, and people are doing it. Whatever you can do to get famous, you should do.
Yes.
To get them to come to the show.
Of course.
The jokes are the show. If you have to do commercials, a voice in a cartoon, like whatever you have to do to get them out, like I totally, even if it's embarrassing or whatever.
By the way, let's not forget, people are like, it's bullshit. He just got famous for this viral clip. That's kind of what happened to Bill Burr. Bill Burr got famous from a viral crowd work clip. Where he didn't do one, where he just called them fucking assholes.
I don't know if I remember I had never heard of Bill Burr.
Yeah.
And I was listening to an early podcast because I was early on podcasts. I was listening to him like in 2006 when they were like 3.
Yeah.
And Patton Oswalt was on, and he mentioned the viral thing from Philly. And that's how I found out who Bill Burr was.
But you know what the difference is, though, between that and that now? The difference is Bill Burr would have done jokes if they weren't the worst crowd in the world.
That's the thing.
These people now are just doing, like, for us road comics, crowd work is always an emergency exit.
Here's what I say.
Now it's like taking over the prime part of your set.
I'm going to do all my hits that you probably heard 1,000 times, but I always say...
It's all right. They haven't heard it. You don't have to keep on telling me. Yeah.
Being a comedian...
It's like you don't know we're on a podcast.
I don't leave the house a lot.
It's like interviewing my grandpa.
I know.
Yeah.
But being a comedian is like being a piano player that knows karate.
Uh-huh.
So you want to play the piano.
That's good.
You want to play the piano, but if you come at me, I know karate.
Yeah, but you're not going to feed you don't want to get known. You don't want to like have that be the majority of your set.
I'm really good at karate.
People are opening with karate.
Like I'm amazing at crowd work.
People are now opening and doing mostly karate.
And the piano's just sitting there.
And the piano's just sitting there.
And it's like you worked really hard on the piano. And it's like,
can I do a metaphor?
Oh, please.
We got to go back.
What are you,
and
my
forth
grandpa?
And just tell me when we got to wrap up because it's probably
this could be an extra long.
Start to wrap it up.
Man.
Yeah. But my favorite comedy metaphor for me, because we've been doing it a long time. I have a couple. We'll just go back and forth to end this. One of my favorite.
And I'll end with the joke that you thought was good about my dead parents.
Okay, one of my favorite comedy metaphors for me that I thought of is comedy. What do you think about this? Comedy is like gambling, but instead of money, it's your self-esteem.
Oh.
So like every night you're gambling with your self-esteem.
Because you put a little out here.
You put a little out there.
Sometimes you go bust.
Yeah, and basically you're always, and the house always wins. But like you're always like.
Now that's the darkest part of that joke.
Yeah. But that is like
net sums.
But that is why we come back. We're like, all right, let's see how much money we got on my self-worth tonight.
That is a good point. Right. Steve Martin said.
What?
What did he say? It's the ego's last stand or something. He said it's I don't know what he said.
Well, the other great one is Harry Shearer said. Comedians do jokes to beat the bully from doing the joke first, you know?
Or it's the thing is I want to control why you're laughing at me because you're going to laugh at me. Like I actually remember the moment when I was like 14, I was in high school and I just wanted to make girls laugh so they would like me. And I think I was afraid to talk to them.
Right.
But I knew if I said funny stuff, I remember I was so funny when I was 14. I remember girls my age like weeping, red in the face, falling down. Like, that's how funny because I would go on a riff. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm having sex with her right now.
Well, that's what comedy comes from.
Like, I'm fucking this girl. Like, I'm afraid to do it.
It is an evolutionary way for less attractive people to get laid.
Yeah.
So when you see hot people doing comedy, it is a bit of a travesty because you're like, you don't need this for survival.
But what I remember is the moment where everything I said was awkward.
Yeah.
People would go, what the fuck was that? And I remember the moment where I was like, okay, I'm awkward, but if I lean into it 20%.
Yes.
Now it's funny.
Yes.
So I'd say something awkward, but then I address the awkwardness and get weirder and lean into it.
And then you have control.
I'm like, oh, now I'm being funny.
Yes.
Now I'm controlling what's weird.
I remember one time there was like a crossword puzzles in class and they had fresh ink. It was like a page. And I put the page on my face and it had the whole crossword puzzle. I got a big laugh. And I remember thinking, I probably would have done that accidentally. So it's a good thing I did it deliberetely because I'm an idiot. I would have done that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is a way to control it. But my last comedy thing, the reason people heckle is because for them perspective, like they don't heckle other shows. For their perspective, they're like, oh, your voice is like an instrument and I have an instrument. So a person heckles thinks like, it's from their perspective, they see someone on stage playing a clarinet and then everyone in the audience has a clarinet on their lap. So someone's going to chime in. But what they don't realize is the voice isn't the instrument. The instrument is the audience.
That's so true. And if you're...
So your heckling is really the fucking trombone, heckling you. Yeah.
Because to go back to the, like, why all the audience clips are kind of messing us up is because... what was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say that we can't underestimate how much they don't know how comedy works.
Yeah.
So I think even smart people, the majority of the audience thinks we're just making it up.
Right.
Which sounds crazy to us.
Yes.
But I always had that thought of, if you really think I am such a cocky asshole that I thought I was deserved to walk up on stage with nothing.
Yeah.
And just talk, heckle that guy.
Yes.
Like, but no, I'm a guy that took 10 years.
But
to write this stuff, and I'm still doing some of the jokes, by the way.
But I definitely don't. But
But like, you don't know. I was in a cave preparing for this day for 10 years. But so that's, if they knew that, to go back to the piano thing, like, I feel like I'm a little girl ballerina. They worked on her act, and you're throwing rocks at it.
No, it's insane. I had a woman come up to me after a show, and she said, "Good job," which is annoying because it's like, just say "great job." I didn't I didn't put a family on hold for good job.
Sometimes they give you like little league coach energy.
Where
they're like, hey,
keep at it.
Good hustle up
there. But
there.
then 2 minutes later, she comes back and she goes, "Is there anyone? Can you fix the bathroom for me?" So I'm like, I got so upset because I'm like, it's okay that you think I work at this mall as a custodian, but the fact that you think I have a 9-to-5 job as a custodian at this mall and still can do an hour of comedy that killed, I think that deserves more than good job. That should be like, how the fuck do you have time?
But I'd say in their defense, the audience members.
Retards?
I'd say at least half if you really do well, I think that you do get a lot of people who look at you with awe.
Smart people. Dumb. The people that don't respect comedy are the dumb people.
But they give you a lot of awe. So that is nice. But then sometimes they don't. Sometimes at the same show, people will be like, that was amazing. And then the next guy will go, good work, champ.
Well, I know. It's so
and you're
annoying.
like, what did you?
And then there's a lot of people who are like, I just could never have the courage to go up there. Like, I'm also funny. Like, it's not just about like,
people that go,
hey, he had a lot of bravery to go up there.
Or they say, how did you remember all that?
Yeah, it's like.
And you're like, that's the easiest part.
Yeah.
I mean,
but like, and we got to wrap this up. I'll wrap this up. But like, just real quickly, it's, wait, what the fuck was I saying? But now it's crowd work what's happening now. And this is a weird place. What's happening now is people, when you do material, they think you're just making it up on the spot.
Yes.
And then when you do crowd work,
they're giving you.
They think you're like brilliant. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I guess they think you're making it up on the spot, but they just think it's way more brilliant than it is.
Because basically the whole thing about crowd work for me is you're just, like right now we're talking.
Yeah.
You're saying things to me. I'm saying them back.
Yeah.
Like that's just how communication works.
Yes.
But if you put it up on a stage, people are like, how did he think of a thing? Because most people have crippling stage fright. I had it when I started. So the first thing you do when you're a comic is get over that.
Right.
But once you're over that, crowd work is just you going, hey, look how nervous I'm not up here. That's all it is. You're going like, I'm responding in real time because I've gotten over that fear.
Right.
But that's the first thing you learn.
It's the first thing, yeah.
Everything else is more hard.
It's the hard work, yeah. But yeah, crowd work's destroying comedy, but you got to do what you got to do.
But some people are doing it.
All right, so end with
the I hope this works.
Dad joke.
Well, I remember we were just in the kitchen talking, and I said that the thing about having dead parents for so long is the worst thing that can happen to you is your parents die.
Yeah.
It fucking sucks. It rips your heart out. And that happened to me so long ago that I'm over it. It was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I basically have the okayness with dead parents that a 70-year-old has.
Right.
Like if you went to a 70-year-old and said your parents are dead, they'd be like, I don't know. I don't know. I was fucking 50. Your parents die when you're in your 50s, right?
Yeah.
So the worst thing that could happen to anybody happened to me so long ago that I'm invincible to it.
Right.
And when I look at other people, I go, it's coming for all of you. You fucking pussies are going to have your hearts ripped out and you don't even know.
Right.
And I'm over it.
Right.
I got it out of the way.
I guess you shouldn't do dead parent jokes.
Maybe I did it differently, and you
I feel like you did it differently. You did it differently.
What was the take?
I can't remember that, but it was great. It was great.
It was basically I was mocking people for their parents hadn't died yet.
Yeah,
something like that.
I think it was like you being jealous of basically everyone you ever knew or something. Because like,
oh, that was another thing where like I haven't had them for so long that the concept kind of is weird to me now.
Yeah.
So like I've had friends who I've been staying at their place and their parents come over with like laundry and like candy and they're like, oh, these fucking assholes. I'm like, old people just show up and give you things.
Yeah, you look. That was
that what it was?
You look at everyone as entitled. Like the way I look at rich kids, you look at anyone with living parents.
It's such a weird concept to me now. An elderly couple showed up to be nice to you. What are you, like a special needs person?
Yeah.
Like I remember I was sleeping on my friend's couch and his parents came over with literally food and blanket and his laundry. They came over with his laundry and his food and he was like, ugh, thanks. Get out of here. And they were like, but we love you. And he's like, get out of here. Get out of here. Why you're making me look lame? And I was just like, they just come over? And I was like, can I go back home with them?
I only get that once a year when my dad haunts me. Like
I mean, sure, I hear the rattling chains, and I know they love me.
So it's pretty bad when your parents die.
Oh, it's horrible. I think I was an alcoholic for 10 years. I don't know if that was part of it. Although I was going to be an alcoholic anyway.
Yeah. It's funny how I never asked you how you felt with your parents dying. It's just like, why haven't you written jokes about it? But I
feel like living with you was mostly you thinking of dead parents jokes. I'd go make coffee in the morning, and you'd come in like in your robe and be like, okay.
How would you be annoyed how annoyed would you be if I had a famous solo show that was just about your dead parents? It's just like, I have a friend who has dead parents. It's been really hard on me.
And then you went, and I know somewhere they're proud of me, and you lowered a picture of my parents, like full size. This is for you guys.
But anyway, you're a great comic. I still think you should do some dead parent jokes, but your jokes are great. Check out his special. It's on YouTube right now. It's hilarious. It came out in 1983. Gilda Radner's introducing him on stage.
I'm thinner and younger, and that's special.
But check it out. What's it called?
Live at the Comedy Attic, free on YouTube.
Live at the Comedy Attic.
Just Google it.